Hello, Acers. Welcome to this week's Irregular Ace Report. This is the Ace Role Playing Games channel on YouTube. This is the official channel for the Ace Role Playing Games clubs that are possibly going to be springing up more near you. So, we're not quite at mid-February yet, but I did want to remind any of you that are in the Utah areas that if you can make it to SaltCon, I'd love to have you at my table. I have two tables that are still open for Thursday and Friday, and we're going to be having some great fun up there. That said, um, well, of course, I was always in Mason Emerson. I'm the founder and main sponsor for Ace Role Playing Games Clubs, and I want to help you set up a role playing game club near you. Something that you and your friends can go do. You'll have an adult sponsor who will be there at the friendly local game store or boys and girls clubs or after church groups or whatever. But it'll be a group that is just yours where you guys can tell your stories. Now, that's actually the point that I wanted to kind of bring up today. And it actually leads into some of the stuff that I wrote down as I was going to talk about today anyway. So, first of all, I want to ask, what is a story? Writing it down so that way I can remember it. Because here's the thing. If you write something down, especially if you write it down by hand, then you're going to remember it a lot better and a lot longer. I mean, I wrote most of my papers on type. I just typed them into a computer throughout college. But that's because at one point I hated writing. And then I did a thing called the Artist's Way. And it was at a very low point in my life. I wasn't happy with where things were and what things were going on, and I was feeling very stuck and stymied. And it was a therapist friend who recommended I look into the Artist's Way, and I'm so glad I did, because the Artist's Way encouraged me, and I did it for like a year. Every day, first thing in the morning, I'd sit down and write 3 handwritten pages, just wrote them, and I still have journal volumes basically, but they were just brain dumps, free form thinking brain dumps. And maybe I'll go back to doing that, although using the Rocket Book that I've talked about before, no sponsorship. I don't have any sponsors, so that way I don't have to say that for every product and thing that I mentioned. But those are, maybe if I start doing that again, that'll help me just get the clarity that I need. Because what my goal is to be able to just let my brain be free to be creative during the day. So, with that said, let's talk a little bit about story. Because I think I have to switch around my 2 next topics that I was writing down about story and the hook. And I'll get to that in a second. But what is story? Is story a sequence of events of things that happen? I think that's part of it. But it's more a sequence of events that happens, of events that happen to a person and their responses to it. So it's that old question of, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? And well, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there, does it make a sound? Because if you think about that question, it's true that you have to be there to experience it to be able to say whether or not a sound is of any meaning to you. So, if a bad guy starts a war, but your characters are on the other side of the world, does it matter to your characters right now? No. So, if there's a war, bring your characters into it. Make it matter to them. Make it so it's between their 2 home countries. or make it so it's even a civil war inside of a country. Whatever it is, make it so it matters something to the characters. Because without that emotional content, that emotional impact, you're not going to make the story matter. So let me tell you a story. I, at one point, thought I was going to be a novelist. And who knows, maybe someday I will still write a novel. But what I did learn is I realized I didn't, I mean, what I learned was this first. English was like the first course I took when I went to college. And I was an okay English student. I think I I think I barely passed the AP English exam with a 3. So going back to high school. And I didn't think I was going to be an English major. But my uncle Dave Wolverton, my late uncle, he he told me about how he was an English major, and I had decided when I was 13 that I wanted to be him. I wanted to be just like him. And so I wanted to follow his path and do what he did. Now, I did want to also get a degree in science, like physics or something like that, because as I started learning about Dave and other authors like him, whose works I really enjoyed reading, um, I realized that I realized that I like science. I like hard science fiction. I like Robert Heinlein and and actually some of the harder science fiction writers as well. But I also liked the soft science fiction, softer science fiction, like Ender's Game. Ender's Game was a book that changed my world. And if you want to see a good way of telling a story, read Ender's Game. Read it frequently. And actually, I also recommend reading its kind of sister novel, Ender's Shadow, because it's two good ways of looking at the same events or similar events. Because at one point they are matched up, but then one goes off the other direction and one goes off a different direction. And when you see that, you see the same overall major events happening and how it affects two different characters emotionally in a different way. Now, in stories, the characters are your characters that you've created. And you can ask the refining questions for a character. Who are they? What do they want? Why do they want it? How hard are they willing to work to get it? And how do they change? Those are the 5 main key character questions. Now, I'm not saying that your players with their characters can't decide to have a story arc like that. And that's what a story arc is. It's the process of change of that main character from where they start the beginning of the story to the end. And that's a good thing. However, you don't have control over that. So that's one of the places where I had to learn this for myself because I started off being wanted to be like Uncle Dave. I started off trying to make my role-playing game characters do what I wanted them to do. And that is a concept called railroading. Now, if you're in a one-shot, a bit of railroading is necessary to just be able to get through the story. But if you're playing a campaign, go ahead and let the story go where it goes. Let the players figure out what they want to figure out. And you, as the representative of the world, respond to them. So if the fighter decides that you guys have to get in to see the king, so he just beats up the guards at the gates, and then you guys rush in. The king, as you as the game master, will say, the king is not happy because you were not escorted in here by his guards. He's not going to listen to you. He's not going to trust you. Whereas if you negotiate with the guards and you persuade the guards to let you in, they're going to come in and escort you. And the king will maybe listen to you and let you become better. So that's, excuse me, that is how you need to look at this. You don't present the story. You present the events. And I've said this before. You present the events and you let the characters build the story. Now, here's the other thing. Is that when you are presenting that story or presenting those events are caused though by your antagonists or by the world itself. Whatever is opposing the heroes, that is what causes those events. So, think about this. If you have a villain, such as my villain in Harvey's Heroes, Aloysius Aurelius. Aloysius is a British Angora cat. Now, you may notice that this is not quite a British accent, and that is because it is not a British accent, it is a transatlantic accent. And Aloysius is very intent on keeping those rodents in their place, and possibly in his belly. So, Aloysius, being a larger creature, he will fight to keep the foods and the house of the owners safe. But of course, Aloysius also has his ideological counterpart, his physical counterpart, in the person of James Sir Bensonmum, the hound dog who lives on the property in his doghouse. But here's the funny thing about his doghouse, is that when you go inside, it resembles very much a gentleman's club, where you have the fireplaces and the upholstered leather armchairs and the smoking stands, although no one in there actually smokes anything other than a bubble pipe. So, we are child friendly because we do not condone tobacco use. No. But he is a little more British, and he is deathly opposed to Aloysius. And so you can see the jowly-faced, yes, quiet dog, and the, oh dear me, I guess I'm going to have to kill you now, aren't I? So these non-player characters each have their own motivations and their own desires and their own thing that they want. So you can apply the story arc questions, well, except the fifth one of how does he change. So who is he? What does he want? Why does he want it? And how far is he willing to go to get it? So those are questions you need to look through in your own head about your villains, about your world. And maybe the world itself is the problem, but still, whatever's going to cause the problems that the heroes need to overcome, that is what you need to know. That is all you need to know. And that's why next week I'll talk about the hook. But for now, I want you to just understand that if you want to write a novel, like I've said before, get yourself a bottle of ginger ale or cream soda or something like that. Sit down at your laptop or your computer keyboard and write your novel. It's okay. That's creative. That's putting a piece of yourself out there. That's telling the story because you haven't told it yet. And that's how it should be. It doesn't matter because you'll hear people say, oh, every story's already been told. Yes, but you haven't told it yet. And it emotionally means something to you. So that's my biggest piece this week, to just remind you, when we're doing role-playing games, we put in our emotions. Like you saw last week with the fight between the skeletons and our soldier. Which, by the way, I've played that fight. I recently replayed that fight against a friend of mine. I played the hero, and he was learning how to game master, so he played the skeletons. And his rolls came out so good, and I kept rolling so crappy. I got the crap kicked out of me. I got the living crap kicked out of me. The three skeletons rushed my soldier and they ganged up on him, so they had a +2 bonus each one of them on their attacks, and it was just bam, bam, bam. I had to back out of the cemetery gate, but that was what he did though. He put it in a cemetery, and I didn't know why I was there, but emotionally, knowing that it was in a cemetery, that made me more involved for this wild card night. So that's what I want to coach you on this week, is how to put in that emotion, how to get excited, and how to just throw your emotions entirely into wanting your what your main characters want. And that's the other thing. That's the other side of it. Don't be so emotionally involved in your villains that you can't be emotionally thrilled when your players do a slam dunk, do a one shot on that black dragon as a novice. Don't, because you are going to emotionally be more excited by the outcome of the heroes than you are the outcome of your villains. I mean, I just watched for my first time a movie that I don't recommend you see yet, because it does have some very grown-up themes in it, and it was actually rated R for a very good reason. And there's lots of gruesome, gory deaths in it. But that movie was inspiration enough to encourage a couple of British writers to rewrite it and make it kind of silly. And in the end, it isn't the son of the devil who wins, but it's God who wins. And that's the best part about it. It is such a good, it was a really well told story, but the book is still more my favorite. That was my first exposure to it. And if you want to read the book is a PG-13, and it's called Good Omens. It's by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. And it still, to this day, is one of my all-time favorite novels, especially for the footnotes that are in there about the different versions of the Bible. And it's very funny. So if you're an older teen and your parents are okay with it, you can get it. But if you're 12 to, say, 15, 16, maybe, well, I don't know, maybe 12 to 14 at least, I would recommend that you do not yet read it. But that's between you and your parents. And that's the thing also. If you feel that you find something in your gaming or in your reading or in your movie watching or in your life that concerns you, take it to a trusted adult, but try and trust your parents first, or your guardian, whoever it is that is truly in this world to look out for your welfare. So that's really all I have to say this week. Otherwise, we're gaming for good. That's what we're here to do. And we're going out there and we're going to make this world a better place. So until this time, next week, more or less, this is Mason Emerson for Ace Role Playing Games, where we're gaming for good, signing off.